The 7 deadly sins, according to Christianity, are a list of human behaviors that are believed to lead people away from a good and fulfilling life. They are known as lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, and pride. In the Pokemon world, there are 7 characters who perfectly embody these sins, and in this video, I'll explain why they do so. Let's start off with lust. The sin of lust is described as the intense longing or desire for sexual pleasure. It can also be strong desire for money, fame, and power. It was quite hard for me to think of a villain that suits this sin, but I think the one who fits this archetype the most has to be Lusamine from Pokemon Sun and Moon. Lusamine is the mother of both Lily and Gladion, as well as the head of the Ether Foundation, which is an organization dedicated to protecting Pokemon from bad humans by providing them a safe environment to live in. At first, Lusamine appeared to be a kind and protective lady who wanted to create a utopia for Pokemon, but her real dark side showed quite the opposite. After losing her husband Mon, her kindness faded away, which led her to have an obsessive and lustful desire with the Ultra Beasts, especially Nihilego. So obsessive that she made her own daughter dress like one. Eventually later on, she fuses with Nihilego, becoming Mother Beast, so that she can live in a world where only her and Nihilego are together. Ultimately, her extreme lustful desires led to her being defeated and falling into a coma, never to be seen again. Gluttony. Gluttony is described as the overindulgence and overconsumption of anything to the point of excess. It's mostly associated with food, but can also be for stuff like buying stuff you don't need. You know, like those people who collect too much Stanley Cups and Prime drinks back in the day. For me, I think the villain who best represents gluttony are Maxie and Archie, as the goal of Team Magma was to expand the land, whilst Team Aqua desires for expanding the sea. While both have good intentions on paper, both claim they are acting for the good of humanity. But in reality, their visions are driven by obsession rather than balance. We can see their gluttony taking place especially in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, where both teams decide to capture either the red or blue orb to revert Kyogre and Groudon to their primal forms. Due to their arrogance for more land or sea, they almost caused the destruction of the entire Hoenn region itself, ironically eliminating their goals. Too much land and there's not enough water to drink, and too much water means no land to stay in. If you really think about it, these two are like giving a kid access to the red nuke button, thinking they'll handle it responsibly, only for them to destroy the entire country. In the end, I describe Maxie and Archie's downfall not being of evil intent, but instead their unrealistic goals to reshape the world to their own desires. And as the saying goes, too much of anything is bad for you. Greed. The sin of greed is an intense desire and passionate love for material and wealth, such as love for money or land. Greed results from a senseless longing for what you don't need. Take notes, EA. Ghetsis was way too perfect for me not to include him here, as he's the embodiment of greed itself. Ghetsis is one of the 7 sages and the leader of Team Plasma, serving as the main antagonist of Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2. Team Plasma started off as an organization, with their goals being to liberate all Pokemon from their trainers by either manipulating them to release their Pokemon or by theft. However, under all of this preaching Ghetsis did, he had a completely different plan. The truth was, he was using liberty as an excuse to leave humans powerless so that he can be the only trainer left to have Pokemon to himself. Ghetsis would be described as a true sociopath who has little to no emotions to anyone around him. He manipulated N, his adoptive son, ever since he was a child, to see humans as terrible people who had to have their Pokemon free. He also sees Pokemon as just tools for him to achieve his goals, as shown in Pokemon Black and White 2, where he planned to use Kyurem to freeze the entire Unova region. Also, he's the first Pokemon villain to canonically attempt to kill the player. I mean, he's that bad that even his Hydreigon hates him, as it's holding a life orb, which increases a move's power in exchange for losing HP, and having max power and frustration, which is a move that increases in power the more the Pokemon hates its trainer. That's why some people theorize that his Hydreigon ripped off his eye and arm, as he is missing both throughout the story. While Ghetsis' greed ends up in his team collapsing, the next villain's goals were crushed out of pure impatience. Sloth. Sloth is described as laziness and the avoidance of responsibility. Finding a villain that best represents Sloth was quite difficult, but the closest I could match is Chairman Rose. Just like Ghetsis, Rose's supposed ideology led to his own defeat. Chairman Rose is the main antagonist of Pokemon Sword and Shield. He is the chairman of the Galar Pokemon League, as well as being the president of the corporation Macrocosmos, a company that studies Dynamax and Galar particles in the Galar region. Rose had been very fascinated by the legendary Pokemon Eternatus, which led to him to want to use its power so that he can provide Galar unlimited energy, which he thought was the problem Galar faced. Which, I mean, looking at Galar, I think it has already pretty good electricity to begin with. But this guy just wanted to overconsume more of it because he's too impatient. Also, what's funny is that Regieleki's Pokedex entry states that its entire body is made up of a single organ that generates electrical energy. Regieleki is capable of creating all of Galar's electricity. No wonder he doesn't like Peony. I can see why he's known as the worst written Pokemon villain, cause if that's the goal a villain wants, then I find that pretty ridiculous. I mean, sure, Team Aqua and Magma's goals were too stupid, but at least they were iconic for that. Wrath. Wrath is described as an uncontrolled feelings of anger, rage, revenge, and hatred. It feeds on a strong desire to seek vengeance. There are lots of Pokemon villains who show destruction in them, but one that perfectly encapsulates this is none other than Cyrus. Cyrus is the leader of Team Galactic, who had a goal of using the Red Chain to control Dialga and Palkia so that he can destroy the world to reshape it in his own vision as a god. Cyrus was born and raised in Sunyshore City in Sinnoh. Despite him being a good student, his parents weren't impressed. He felt rejected and decided that emotions were a human weakness, and in turn, wanted to reshape the world into a perfect place where he wanted it to be. At first, he and Team Plasma headed off to capture the Lake Trio, but the main character manages to stop him, which causes Cyrus to be jealous as the trainer is able to develop a bond with the Lake Trio, while he couldn't. Later on in Spear Pillar, Cyrus uses the Red Chain to control Dialga and Palkia to reshape the world. In one of his quotes, he says, "I have waited so long for this moment. Dialga and Palkia, shaping this world is a double spiral of time and space. Yes, the very things that you have the ability to control, you will do my bidding. I will have your abilities as mine. With the power I wield, I will create an entirely new world. The incomplete and ugly world we have can now disappear. I am resetting everything to zero. Nothing can remain. It is all for making the ultimate world, a world of complete perfection. Nothing so vague and incomplete as spirit can remain." However, his plans were disrupted as a black hole then appears, with Giratina taking him to Distortion World. Eventually, the player defeats Cyrus in the Distortion World, leaving Cyrus all by himself, still vowing to create his perfect world. Wow, this guy just doesn't know when to quit, does he? In the end, Cyrus shows us how one's own self can be your worst enemy. Instead of reflecting and seeing life in a different light, he clings to his ideology using threats and destructions to end up in his own demise. Envy. The sin of envy is the desire for possessions, happiness, and traits of others. It usually comes from the lack of the person's achievements of other people, hence making them upset or angry. One character's envy led to his own defeat is Lysandre. Lysandre is the descendant of AZ's younger brother, as well as being the leader of Team Flare. Just like Cyrus, Lysandre always desires a world where things were more beautiful and perfect, as shown when talking with Diantha, saying, "You were chosen to be a movie star, correct? Isn't it your duty to be ever beautiful? Everything beautiful should stay that way forever." In Pokemon X saying, "I would make this world unchanging and eternal, so all beauty will last forever." And in Y saying, "I would end the world in an instant so that beauty never fades." He was so convinced on his visions that he was willing to commit mass genocide in humans and Pokemon by wiping them with the ultimate weapon. His reasoning being that he thinks humans are inherently evil and greedy, who will cause tragedies and harm for their own selfish gains, and to destroy Pokemon because humans will continue to use them as tools for war, which, I'm not gonna lie, makes no sense. Like, why can't you just keep the Pokemon only? Not that his vision is any good, but, you know. After Lysandre's defeat, he goes on a crash out, threatening the player by forcing immortality on them, or killing them depending on the game's version. The player and their friends evacuate the building with the blast of the weapon collapsing the HQ and burying Lysandre, never to be seen again. Or was he? Now, spoilers for anyone who hasn't played Legends EA, but basically, Lysandre actually survived thanks to the help of Zygarde. However, most of his memory has been lost in the process. It was shown that due to using the ultimate weapon, Lysandre's body was altered just like AZ, cursing him to live for 3,000 years. As Zygarde had exhausted its power at the time, it asked Lysandre to help it recover in case of a future threat in Kalos. So, I guess you could say, his death was greatly exaggerated. Pride. Considered to be the worst of the 7 deadly sins, pride is defined as an excessive love to oneself and striving to be better than everyone else. In a nutshell, pride is basically glazing yourself. It was quite difficult for me to think of a specific prideful villain, as pretty much almost every villain in Pokemon is prideful, until I decided on Giovanni, the most iconic Pokemon villain in the franchise. As we all know, Giovanni is the leader of Viridian Gym, as well as the boss of Team Rocket. He's also technically the most powerful villain, unless you want to count Cyrus and Volo as the villains with the most power from their Pokemon. Giovanni is the strongest control-wise. I mean, this guy's organization created Mewtwo, one of the most powerful Pokemon. His organization is pretty much an empire, and his followers worship him. He was able to take over Silph Co and hold the president hostage, and after his defeat in the Rocket hideout in Silph Co, he didn't quit, but instead moved on with his plans like everything was gonna be fine, thinking that he's better than everyone. And then Fire Red and Leaf Green, after his defeat in Viridian Gym, he says that he would return to power one day and quote, "Having lost in this fashion, I can't face my followers. I have betrayed their trust. As of today, Team Rocket is finished forever. As for myself, I shall dedicate my life to training again. Let us meet again someday. Farewell." But really, the truth is that he was coming back. 3 years after the events of Kanto, and Team Rocket would come back and take over the Goldenrod radio tower. There they would broadcast to Giovanni begging for his return, in which we see him intending to return in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. That is, if you play the Celebi event where you can go back in time with either Ethan or Lyra to battle Giovanni. But even after his defeat, he returned again, twice. First, in Pokemon Black and White 2 at the Pokemon World Tournament. One thing I don't understand is how are people letting the leader of the Mafia participate in public? Like, why isn't he arrested yet? The last mainline appearance Giovanni appears in is in the Team Rainbow Rocket arc in Pokemon Ultra Sun, which is an alternate timeline where Giovanni succeeded in taking over the entire world. In this arc, this guy literally pulls up the entire Avenger squad, bringing back every mainline Pokemon villain. I'm talking about Maxie, Archie, Cyrus, Ghetsis, Lysandre, everyone was here. But not just that, this guy came prepared. He had every villain have a legendary on their team, including his own Mewtwo, who can now Mega Evolve. But as we know in the plot of Pokemon games, even if you're the head of the entire villain organization, you're inevitably going to be defeated by a 10-year-old. It is what it is. Now, I could talk about his other roles in the spin-off games, but that would take forever. But to keep it short, he's not quitting. He just keeps coming back. From all of his schemes and refusal to lose, it's no wonder why he is best suited as the Sin of Pride, as he sees himself above everyone else and will stop at nothing to be able to take over the world. Sometimes the loudest villains aren't the ones to come out on top, but can just be the simple, calm and collected man with a cat by his side. But what do you guys think? If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel as it would mean a lot to me. So if you enjoyed that, please do tell me in the comments down below. Be sure to type this video and follow my socials. And with that out of the way, I'll see you guys next time.